There have been many challenges throughout the years regarding educational reform. There exist influences and many known facts about this history. Educational reform appears to pose geographic and demographic challenges. James Nearing introduces 6 ideas about what has made reform difficult. The first challenge is said to be the viewing of schools as factories. Men worked in factories which were normally made of red brick. When schoolhouses were also made of red brick, they were thought of as child factories that spit out smarter children like factory goods. Industry was a huge thing in the history of America, so when referring to schools, they used the language of industry. For example, not distinguishing children at a schoolhouse from goods at a factory. The second challenge is said to be the community fears influencing school activity. These fears tend to govern school activity rather than thinking on a more responsible, caring approach. Fears of racial diversity and immigrants are some examples of influence on the governing of schools in the past. For example, the fear of racial diversity kept schools segregated. This led to the case of Brown versus Board of Education in 1951, which moved to desegregate schools. Another piece of history influencing reform was the Puritans in regards to religion. They believed in their church providing education for their children, but still created schools for individual development and growth with Christ. Plans that look good from above can also be a challenge because of making little sense at ground level. Nearing sums up that this is dangerous because those with top positions don't consider their effect when impacted, and they can have bad consequences. One such example is standardized tests. These do not consider future impacts on schools and students. Such effects include interrupting curriculum in the classroom at these schools. The fourth challenge is said to be the system crushing promising innovation. Local innovation is a community implementing something like no standardized tests into their schools and seeing how it affects student achievement. These kinds of tests could hurt public education. The results of this study improved schoolwork and civic duties, but this did not last very long because it did not fit with the system anymore. The fifth challenge is said to be schools tending to say yes to legitimate requests. It has become common to try to make everyone happy, which slows down development in the long run. A small school allowing more than it can handle is simply dangerous and possibly anti-productive to helping those that they can in the best way possible. The sixth challenge is said to be the tendency to promote favored groups to the detriment of others. Throughout history, education has given advantages to already privileged groups. White schools have a record of getting better aid than minority schools. Along with these 6 ideas, gender has had a great influence on the reform of America's schools. Women educated at home and schools during the 1800s. In 1970, Benjamin Rush wrote, "Mothers and schoolmasters are as important as statesmen and ministers in promoting order in the society," with the implication, though, that schoolmasters were men and women were just mothers. This gives the idea of how quickly this idea changed to women also being educators. The majority of teachers began to be females, but women were not seen going to the same colleges as men. In summary, people have come to love educational reform. Through community problems, it has become a need. Education has become more than just learning, and community factors have contributed to our many needs for reform in the educational system. In conclusion, there have been many influences on educational reform, difficulties with educational reform, and impacts from the history of educational reform.